Welcome. So today we're tackling a really big question. Are we training our doctors to be lone heroes, or are we training them to be expert team players? And, could the answer actually be the key to completely revolutionizing healthcare? Let's dive in. When you picture a doctor in your head, what do you see? Is it that solo hero carrying this immense weight all by themselves? Or is it a key player on a really high-performing team? How we answer that question really changes everything for the future of medicine. To really get to the bottom of this, we need to look at how someone truly becomes a medical professional. And it's a journey that goes way, way beyond just textbooks and exams. It's about forging a whole new identity.
There's actually a name for this. It's called Professional Identity Formation, or PIF. And it's this deep psychological journey from just doing the work of a doctor to truly being one. It's a huge transformation where the values of the profession literally become a part of who you are.
Now, here's where it gets really interesting. When it comes to how this identity actually gets formed, educators are kind of split. You've got the individualist view, which sees it as this internal journey of self-discovery, but then there's the social contextual view, which argues that, hey, our identity is really a product of our relationships and the environment we're in. And this is exactly where we find a pretty big flaw in a lot of modern medical education. A recent review uncovered this hidden bias in our training, one that leans heavily towards that individualist approach. So, some researchers went on a deep dive. They sifted through an entire decade of medical education literature, analyzing 43 different studies that were all about shaping the professional identity of doctors.
And what did they find? Well, get this. The most common method, by a huge margin, was reflective and narrative writing. In fact, 19 of those 43 studies, that's nearly half, were just asking students to write about their personal experiences. This really puts the focus squarely on the individual's inner world.
And here's the really critical takeaway from all of this. This hyper-focus on the individual, well, it has a pretty toxic side effect. It takes huge systemic problems like burnout and turns them into personal failings, leaving each doctor feeling like they have to shoulder that burden all alone.
So this brings us to a really different kind of solution. Instead of just trying to build more resilient individuals, what if we focused on expanding their very sense of self? We've kind of seen that the problem isn't necessarily the professional.
No, it's the intense spotlight we've been shining on them as a solo act. We've been so focused on training individual heroes that we've kind of forgotten to build the team.
So the solution then isn't to erase that identity, but to extend it. And this is where a really powerful new concept comes into the picture.
It's called Interprofessional Identity, or IPI. And the idea here is that a professional's identity expands to include not just their specific role, but their membership in a wider healthcare team, all united by that one common goal, taking care of the patient. This is such a brilliant way to show it, right? It's all about these nested identities. You're not losing who you are. Your personal identity is the foundation. You build your professional identity on top of that. But the final, crucial step is extending it to an interprofessional identity. You become more, not less. Okay, so what does this all mean in the real world? Why is this shift from I to we so incredibly important for both patients and the people caring for them? Well, the evidence is pretty clear. When the team becomes a part of your core identity, it just naturally starts to break down those us versus them barriers between professions. Communication gets better, conflicts get resolved more constructively, and, get this, it actually makes people happier in their jobs and creates teams that are way more resilient when the pressure is on. At the end of the day, it completely transforms teamwork from being a task you have to do, a box you have to check, into a genuine expression of who you are as a professional. Collaboration becomes an instinct, not something you're forced to do. So this all brings us to the most important question of all. How do we actually build these kinds of team-oriented professionals in our medical schools? Well, the research gives us a pretty clear roadmap. It starts with building a really strong core professional identity. You don't weaken that. Then it's about weaving team-based learning all throughout the curriculum, using real-world scenarios and shared goals. And finally, it's about encouraging people to reflect not just on their individual role, but on their role within the team. The goal here isn't to dilute or replace a professional's identity. It's actually to build a professional identity that's so secure, so confident, that it just naturally embraces a team identity. The whole point is to empower every single person in healthcare to be able to say this and to really mean it. I am a doctor and also an interprofessional practitioner who works in teams for the good of my patient. And that leaves us with one last big thought. We've seen how powerful this shift from I to we can be in medicine. So, think about your own profession. What would it look like to build a stronger team identity in your field? And what incredible things could you all achieve together?